Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Or no one, I should say. Whoever's watching, now or later. Good morning, it's Wednesday. It's me, Dan Rocca, deprogramr. It's funny, I made that handle like when I first got a YouTube, which was 2007. It's funny, you know, back when Christopher Hitchens was still alive. People weren't even atheists yet. No, I'm just kidding. There was a ton of atheists, but it was such a funny, I was kind of jumping around YouTube yesterday, noticing the difference between then and now on YouTube, and just how much of an explosion YouTube has experienced, an explosion of content. Then also it's just there's an intellectual air about YouTube now, which is very different than that period. I think I've been thinking about Jordan Peterson a little bit as like filling that Hitch role in a very different sense, but it's like the fighting intellectual. Who was that but Hitchens, right? Like Hitchens was most definitely the fighting intellectual, the one who was willing to kind of really good, some good linguistic jabs, and just a force and a sort of entertainment value and a storytelling capacity that is rivaled by few. And then you kind of get this Jordan Peterson coming along, which I think is interesting. Anyways, not to get too down on that topic. Yeah, I mean, yesterday, so I was listening to speaking of Jordan Peterson, I was listening to a debate yesterday between him and David Benatar about antinatalism. And that was a really interesting. I haven't really gone too far down the antinatalist rabbit hole. I guess I've always really loved children, and I've never really thought that was something that I ever really wanted to question, but I want to give a lot of generosity to the antinatalist position. So what do I really is, you know, it's so easy to discount, right, based on our culture and our understanding and our senses of values around children and such. It's easy to just antinatalism doesn't make any sense. And it's also kind of, it seems a little bit easy, like what Jordan Peterson was doing was very accurate, to question the kind of axioms of an idea and then to take them to a logical conclusion, which is essentially no more humans, right? Because if life is, essentially the argument is like life is more suffering than it is good. I mean, I'm really distilling it. I'll link the wiki to it and some other things in the description. I'll even link the debate, but it is essentially the argument sort of goes like, okay, because life is more suffering than good, because it's more bad than good, it is almost like a cruel thing to do to subject a human, or to create a human and to subject them to this life of suffering, you know, this like extended amount of suffering. Which I think is, I mean, when you really break it down, when you start thinking about like ecological footprint and, you know, how you know, indoctrination, all these forces, you know, in some ways you know, I guess it's tough. It's tough to sort of reconcile some of those claims with my experience, because obviously there are things that are very, I don't even know, painful about life or frustrating. I mean, okay, so Jordan Peterson's rebuttal, let me just summarize the debate a little bit. So Jordan Peterson was essentially kind of saying, like, you're not you don't have to look at it this way. It's almost like a semantic framework that poisons the well of the argument to say you're imposing suffering by having a child. Because in essence, what you're also doing is giving this child an opportunity for life, to exist and to live and to be. An opportunity which they would not get if they were never born. And I guess I started thinking about it in a sense of, okay, so again, to be generous to David Benatar's argument, it's like, I'm not going to just say, okay, everybody should just commit suicide. Well, by your logic, everyone should just commit suicide. I mean, that was almost my first gut reaction. Like, it's a gut reaction to say, okay, you don't like existence, you don't like children, you don't think we should exist because there's all this pain. You're looking at it as a ratio of pain to pleasure or something like that. Not he clarified his position on hedonism, but again, to be generous, it's like, okay, so people who choose not to have children, in a sense, we should be not treating them as outcasts, but as kind of like altruistic in a sense, right? And even, I guess, yeah, it's altruistic because they're essentially not putting more, I don't know, sort of entities into the world that need to consume and experience pain. So I get that. Like, I actually sort of have some understanding of that. Like, I'm not just trying to discount this entire view. I do think it does bring up a weird question of like altruistic suicide, which David Benatar didn't seem to want to really directly answer when Jordan Peterson brought up this idea of like a sleeping person. Why don't you just poison a sleeping person? Because they wouldn't necessarily be aware of the fact that they're going to die. They wouldn't have any kind of like position to fight back, but then you're also alleviating them from all this suffering. I think it's a very good point of contention, and one that it deserves to be properly answered. Because I would say the same thing. Like, I'm not here to advocate for any kind of suicide. People should not commit suicide, in my opinion. People should find reasons to live, and that's kind of what Jordan Peterson's point was as well, right? What I started thinking about. It's almost like what you are being presented with life is almost like a game, and it almost, to me, I want to take David Benatar's position as almost like to the next step. I was like, I'll accept that life has a lot of suffering in it, much like Peterson did in the debate. But then it's almost like, well, what is the response to that suffering, right? I guess in his mind, the response is just to not create more of it, which is, I don't know. So I guess it seems arbitrary when you think of life, how I'm going to summarize it, which is essentially like a game. There is a game where you are experiencing suffering. Part of the object of this game is to alleviate that suffering for yourself. Everybody's playing that game in some ways, in one form or another. I think some people play it more materially. So people play it materially by buying things and sort of not isolating, but protecting themselves in material things or with material things. And I guess eschewing that suffering through the acquiring and consumption of material objects. And then you sort of have this other way of playing. See, I'm almost like, I'm trying to think of this, it's not necessarily always the same set of rules, because you almost get this other set of rules which is about alleviating desire from inside, right? So it's not about going outward to alleviate the desire. It's not like, oh, I want a keyboard, so I'm going to buy a keyboard to alleviate the desire. It's like, no, I'm going to internally alleviate myself from that desire preemptively, as to not really need it. It's almost like you're trying to narrow down what you really need or really desire, or I think that's another way to alleviate suffering that I don't think was really addressed, or that kind of distinction on how to alleviate suffering. I don't know if that was necessarily addressed, as opposed to just seeing life as an inevitable suffering, sort of looking at it as a suffering that's Like, you know, think of, and I played a lot of video games, so I think of like suffering as like the boss of the video game, and your job is to defeat the boss, right? And I mean, that's not the only thing. I mean, that's not, you don't want to hinge your entire existence on your alleviation of suffering per se. But I guess the idea that you would just resign yourself to understanding that life is suffering, and that you just sort of, I guess, just retreat under those conditions or something. I mean, another thought I had, this is maybe a little, I don't want to insult David Benatar, but I had this odd thought that it sounded, okay, so Nietzsche has this quote or something. Nietzsche said something along the lines of, all philosophy is an unconscious confession of the philosopher, or something along those lines. Like, it's essentially like people make philosophies to sort of deal with their own inner, oh, did you hear that? I don't know. I wonder if that picked up. Stomach growling. They deal with their own inner problems, like the things that they're confronting kind of gets twisted into some sort of philosophy. And I've thought about that a lot, I mean, as I write and as I think and as I discuss things. But I guess what I gathered, there was this odd thought that I had, was it sounded like it's the philosophy of almost like a frustrated sadist, like someone who does want to see the world, like, because they're thinking of pain in a certain way, but it's almost like it was a part of me that kept feeling like he was sort of like a guy who wants to inflict pain, but then doesn't feel like that's appropriate. So instead of inflicting pain in the world, he's going to alleviate the world entirely. Like, it just seemed odd. There was just this odd, there was something I kept sensing in the debate of this kind of like, yeah, I don't know, it was weird. And maybe that's me. Maybe it's just pure projection. I don't know. It's pure projection, possibly. But I've never really felt that way, so it was weird. It just had this sense. I don't know. It was just a feeling, I guess. I don't know. Take it or leave it. Think about it. The philosophy of a frustrated sadist. I don't know. It would be just... It's almost like sometimes I've talked to vegans, okay? And I don't have a problem with veganism as a whole. It's complicated. These are people's ideas. They're people's subjective views on life. When am I walking around having a problem with other people's subjectivity? There's a task. But I guess the idea is, I've talked to some vegans where it's almost like they get to this point where it feels like they would rather sterilize the entire planet than to see an animal suffer. And that's contradictory. Like, there's a serious contradiction there, which I think is almost like people need to deal with that in their soul. There's something going on in someone's soul if that's their sort of justification or their kind of logical end to this project, right? Is just an alleviation of all suffering by removing all of the good things in the world, right? Removing all of the pleasures. I don't know. Just my mind. I don't know. You take it or leave it. I mean, if you have anything to say about this, of course, feel free to comment or leave a comment, leave a chat. We can talk about these things. You can totally school me and kick my ass on the internet in front of a bunch of people. We'll broadcast it. It'll be great. I'll just get destroyed live. But I don't know. We'll see. All right, so it's Wednesday. Who feels like some weather? It's 4 degrees Celsius. I'm in Canada. We use Celsius here. 4 degrees Celsius. High today of 8 degrees. Low today of 2. So look at that. We're in the pluses. We've gotten into the pluses. It's looking like it might get into the minuses a little bit later in the week, around Saturday and Sunday. But let's hope for the best. It's still kind of miserable and rainy out. But hey, I don't mind the rain. I like there's this beautiful old writing by Khalil Gibran, which is in, what's the book called? Where is it? It's somewhere. I'll get it later. But he was essentially this interesting story where this guy goes to this Secrets of the Heart. That's what it's called. This guy goes to this like sort of super intelligent kind of shaman guru-y kind of figure, and he knocks on the door in the rain, and he says, "Oh, can I come in from the rain?" And the guy's like, anybody who's worthy of coming in my house would appreciate being in the rain. Like I always thought that was something I think about when it rains. I like to appreciate being in the rain, and just understand it's part of life too. Yeah. Life. It's, you only get one. Okay. So, I guess it's about time to draw for a bit. Maybe I'll kind of cut the stream a bit short today. Just got a few things to do in the world. Such and such. So why don't we just listen to a bit more Burning Dirt demos and draw for a little while. And, maybe I'll just cut it short around half an hour today or something. It was nice to have Robert here yesterday. Him and I maybe have some differences of opinion on some things. That's natural and fun. Fun to explore. I mean, it's nice to get into some intense discussions with people, but not everybody's up for intense. Let's argue about something for fun. I don't know. I like that. I think it's I did that 16 personalities thing once, and I was like, I think I'm an ENTP, which is like the people who really like to argue for fun, which tons of people hate me. Probably. I probably bother tons of people. But, I have fun. I'm like a perfect troll, really. I don't even really mind bothering people to a degree. Maybe if they're bothered, maybe they should be bothered a little bit. I've been bothered by so many things. I'm still bothered. I'm constantly bothered. Constant. I live in a constant state of being bothered by something. So, we should be talking about this stuff. We should always be bothered and always be bothering each other. I'm into it. I'm into that kind of world. As long as we can agree on a foundational principle of love and respect, then we can bother each other all day. It's great. I'm constantly being bothered by people. That's how I grow. It's like I get bothered, bother somebody else, we bother each other, we learn how to stop bothering each other, we learn how to deal with each other, whatever it is. Exactly. Getting hyper on this coffee. All right, time to draw. I gotta move around. Had my my protein shake this morning with some fruit, banana, some kefir. It's great. Good space today. All right, just give me a sec here with this mic. Hello? Hello? And I'm back. I am back. Online. Sound online. Sound online. Holy, get prepared. You can see I was not the best Boy Scout. Alright, let's see here. Okay, this is the continuation of Side A, Tape 2 of the Burning Dirt Super Joy Sessions. Let's see where this takes us today. I don't even remember a lot of this music. That's why this is fun for me. I don't even know what it sounds like until I start listening. Oh yeah, that song. Jeez, this is like the marathon track here.
my clothes, see it in my place, see it in the way I walk. It's the way that I want to live, the way that I want to live. I just want to do my thing, just want to do my thing, just want to do whatever I want. I just want to do my thing, just do my thing, just let the world be. It's the way I want to live, it's the way you want to live.
volume is an issue. Hello? So if you get a comment from someone named Elliot Roger, what do you do? There's the question. Why would anyone name themselves after Elliot Roger? Let's see this channel. Boo. Boop. You go now. Dude. Boop. Live. I don't know. Elliot Roger, man. I don't want to have to talk about that guy. Some guy, you know. Dude, deal with your feelings about women and your family. I don't know, man. I'm not going to tell you to suck it up, but don't go killing people, man. Never, man. Never. Terrible idea. All right, well, that just triggered me, so I'm going to go. See ya. Bye.